Prime Minister the announcement of the name of him or her. Well, earlier I was getting the thoughts of the Conservative backbencher Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Several names will come forward. The Conservative Party is fortunate that it has so many dozens of able people, all of whom would make excellent Prime Ministers, but I happen to think that Boris is the best of those in the current circumstances.
What's Boris Johnson doing at the moment?
What's he doing at the moment? Well, I imagine he is talking to people and arranging a campaign and a campaign launch. I would hope he is. I assume he is.
And in terms of a Brexit manifesto, how advanced is that? There's the sense out in the country that nothing's happening.
Well, I think there's a very clear mandate from the referendum result that any new Prime Minister must implement, and that is that free movement of people must end, there must be a fair immigration system, we must stop sending billions of pounds a year to the European Union, and that our laws must be made by our Parliament and not judged on by the European Court of Justice. So it's basically immigration, money and laws. And those three were mandated by the British people. Then on top of that, there's working out the details of trade arrangements with various countries. I actually had lunch with the Taiwanese embassy yesterday, and they were saying we'd be at the front of the queue for a trade deal with Taiwan. So lots of countries will want to do deals with us, and there's getting into the detailed reforms that will need to take place, but they're of a secondary importance.
In terms of those red lines, you mentioned immigration being one of them. At what point does compromise, which inevitably is going to have to play a part, where does that come in?
I think the single market, more accurately the single regulatory zone, is something that we do not wish to remain members of, that only 6% of businesses trade with the EU, but 100% of businesses are hit by those regulations. And if we remain in that, we probably have to accept free movement of people. And I think that has simply been voted down by the British electorate. But there will be areas where we are willing to compromise. Inevitably, this will be a diplomatic negotiation, but I think not on those three core things. We must make our own laws, we must control our own borders, and we must keep our own money. Beyond that, there will be other areas that we can discuss.
Just hearing that Sajid Javid, Business Secretary, is going to back Stephen Crabb, how helpful will it be to have what could be a very difficult Tory leadership battle going on when there is still the repercussion of this seismic decision last week?
Well, I think David Cameron retired with great grace and dignity, and that inevitably meant a new leader had to be elected. But I think that leader has to be somebody who supported leaving the European Union. That you mentioned compromises. If compromises are made by somebody who has always supported Remain, everyone will think that we're being stitched up. It needs to be somebody who is principally committed to leaving the European Union, and that's why Boris is such a strong candidate.
If, say, Theresa May threw her hat into the ring, that's going to... There are a lot of people who... You've heard the phrase, anybody but Boris. There's something going on in Parliament, isn't there, at the moment, where people are trying... There are two sides, definite sides, Boris being one of them, and you. How much of a... Are you worried about the alternative campaign?
Well, the Home Secretary will no doubt have a lot of support. She's been a very distinguished Home Secretary and a very long-serving Home Secretary. But again, she supported Remain. And I think a lot of the people supporting Remain candidates...
She played it very carefully.
She supported Remain. That was the side to which she nailed her colours. And therefore, it's very hard to think that she would be able to do a tough negotiation with the European Union, because that's not in principle where her position is. In principle, her position is to remain a member of the European Union, and I think that weakens her candidature. It's also a continuation of the same, that I think one of the things we should remember about this vote, that it is a rejection of the existing establishment. And I say that knowing full well that I'm pretty much a child of the establishment. But the British people have said we've had enough of that establishment. And I think Boris represents something new and change, whereas Mrs May, with all the great qualities that she's got, represents continuity of the old establishment.
Very briefly, are we going to see a remodelled Boris Johnson, less of the buffoonery, for want of a better word, more of the statesman?
Well, I think he showed in the debates on the referendum that he is very statesman-like. But the reason Boris is so popular is because he's Boris. It would be a great pity if the grey-suited gentlemen got their hands on him and turned him into an old bore.
Jacob Rees-Mogg talking to me a little earlier.